Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. What does one need, or what do people need to stage a coup in this democracy, or to survive the harsh realities of this COVID and Russia-Ukraine war-struck economy that looks to e-levy to add to the historic debt, strangulating and suffocating it in the era of Ghana beyond aid? Coup. The one-word hysteria. Solution. Let's arrest all those announcing it or suggesting it, that it is possible. Fuel. LPG. Witness historic hikes, and cost of food and literally everything increases as transport fares go up and inflation flocks the cedi badly to the 6th, 7th, 8th, and threatening the 10th absurdity of a knockout against the dollar. Workers demand COLA, cost of living allowance, to cushion them as what they earn diminish in value. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here is my take, Samson's take. Stop criminalizing poverty. It is the law in Ghana that vagrancy is crime. Yes. The kind where the person is jobless, begs in the name of selling handkerchiefs in town. The person is also homeless, sleeps rough just anywhere in town. Yes, that makes a criminal who must be flogged by guards or police taking instructions from a mayor, dictated by lazy, binary, not human-centered thinking. This solution has been applied for decades without results. The poor hawker, preferring this life for survival, must be arrested and thrown into jail because she can't afford even the least court fine. The Republic prefers to spend less than 2 Ghana cedis a day to feed her in a congested, overcrowded prison with the least opportunity to get a skill to be self-reliant upon her release. Note that being quarrelsome, which attracts up to 3 years in jail. Some are crammed in there for making loud noises, singing a profane song. Let the vandals shout amen. Indecent, obscene, or abusive songs, displaying insulting inscription or object to annoy or irritate someone. Mark that. Annoy or irritate someone. Or use abusive words, but they were unable to afford the up to 120 cedis fine. These laws are subject to abuse because they give unfettered discretion to police, who are often quick to arrest upon a complaint before in trial. I know a judge who handed an accused the least fine and ended up paying it herself because the offense was not worth the custodial sentence compelled by law. Newsfile has had to pay for the liberty of a young man who stole plantain so his wife and baby could feed. We got him tools for a barbering saloon to be able to cater for his young family in dignity. The Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative has been paying some of these fines to secure the freedom of the poor. This week, I moderated a national conference on decriminalizing Deputy Attorney General Alfred Tuah-Yeboah, MPs, and all who spoke urged swift decriminalization of petty offenses and passage of the bill seeking to introduce non-custodial sentencing regime in Ghana. Stop criminalizing poverty. We have obligations to implement agreements we have signed to this effect, including the AU Charter's requirement to promote equality before the law, dignifying treatment, and action plan for accelerated prison reforms. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights Convention against degrading treatment or punishment, and Goal 16 of the Sustainable Development Goals for inclusive societies and access to justice for all. There is also the African Commission on Human and People's Rights 2017 commitment against arbitrary arrest and detention, and to avoid recourse to law or bylaws. I invite those who love this democracy to rise to protect the judiciary against years of sustained vile propaganda by politicians to destroy that institution critical to sustaining this country. The NDC has just petitioned the Commonwealth Secretariat against what it claims are state-sponsored persecutions of its members. It cannot be a good system only when it goes in your favor. Sometimes a judge just cannot do anything about your case simply because he or she dislikes you. Let the people who in the evidence isolate errant judges and use due process to exact discipline rather than the spirited wholesale bastardization in undermining this democratic enterprise by unjustly seeking to destroy the only thing it thrives on for our collective good: integrity, trust, and confidence. That is my take. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts. CBG, we stand with you. Edlom Housing, where spacious homes cost less. Duroplus, where Duroplus goes, water flows. Rehoboth Properties, quality housing for all. Now, welcome. It's been a week where the word coup, is it just one word hysteria, so to speak? Is this such a serious matter that anyone who mentions it must get to be arrested? Joining me this morning to have this discussion why we are so scared of the word coup in a democracy of a 65-year-old nation. Dr. Arthur Kobina Kennedy, physician and political activist. Professor Kwadwo Appiagyei-Tuah, School of Law, University of Ghana. Dr. John Osai-Kwapong is political scientist, democracy and development fellow, CDD, Ghana. Good morning, gentlemen. So privileged to have you for this show.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
Good morning, and thanks for having us.
Right. So in the course of the week, some people have made certain comments that's preceding the arrest of Oliver Barker-Vormawor for his threatened e-levy coup. Let's hear Professor Raymond Atugba, who is the Dean of the Law School, University of Ghana. Commodore Steve Dabo also spoke about this. We have Dr. Obed Asamoah and Professor Techiwa Menu all speaking to us about this. Then there is Katie Hammond, who wants Professor Atugba to be sleeping where Oliver Barker-Vormawor has been sleeping in the last almost 3 weeks or so. Let's listen to them.
We do not want a coup in this country. Yet I fear that if we do not act quickly, we may have one in our hands very soon. A former colleague, doctoral student at Harvard, wrote his dissertation also on Ghana. He now teaches at a war college in the US. Imagine the name of the college, War College. Whilst my topic was on the Ghana police, his PhD thesis was on the topic, quote, why certain coups succeed and why others fail. His case study was Ghana. My current assessment that Ghana may be ripe for a coup partly springs from the knowledge I gained from accompanying my friend through part of his doctoral research on this topic.
Have you heard any military person making noise? It's all from the civilians. They urge people who, as soon as you say, do not use their brains. Go to Mali, go to Guinea, go to Burkina Faso and others. Is there any change after taking over? You see Burkinabes, Malians and whatnot all trooping to Ghana. Why? Because they find Ghana very peaceful. But people are not learning. I went to my farm. Apart from everything, I'm also a farmer. I went to my farm and some people were discussing, yes, we'll support this. I said, oh. At times, even so-called professors and whatnot become illiterates when it comes to such issues.
I do not see that there is anybody is calling for a coup or wants a coup, or that more fundamentally that a coup is going to solve any of the problems that we are facing. If anything, it will worsen the situation that we are in. We've seen it before, you know, and even this recent attempt to present the Achampong government as some kind of savior for those of us who lived through it. This is not how it looked, apart from the initial 2 years of Operation Feed Yourself and Operation Feed Your Industries.
Permit me to roll over.
Institutions really started unraveling. You know, so I think that it's not that I don't disagree with Raymond in his fundamentals about the economy and the need for economic transformation, because we are not going to get the jobs that we need. We are not going to be able to dynamize the economy and our society and therefore our democracy.
Thank you.
We persist in this handout kind of thing.
Thank you.
The Eurobond market and raising and coming back. It doesn't change the fundamental.
I've said that the NPP has no intention of giving up the e-levy.
You're not backing down the
No, nonsense. So if we don't kowtow to the needs of the NDC, Atugba is saying that is a precondition for the military to come in. That's what he's saying. I am saying that he's taking leave of his senses. He doesn't have that privilege. Professor of law, he must know what is there in the Constitution.
But these are strong words for you.
Of course, I intend to be extremely strong. I am saying
quite derogatory. I mean,
no. It's a fact. It's a factual reality. If a professor of law who knows the Constitution, he teaches it. He is abrogated all of that and taken leave of half of his brain to go out there and make this assertion, it is unforgivable. It is sinful. Atukuba doesn't have that privilege. It's wrong. The preconditions I've told you, who is about to satisfy that? If we don't do it, the NDC, we are not NDCs. We are MPP government. We don't intend to do anything he is suggesting. If we don't do it, the way is paved for the military to take over. Is that what he is suggesting?
Should the police
How old was it? Well, I'm surprised that by now they haven't called him. I don't know. But, they certainly should invite him.
I don't think there was anything in the script that I have read of Dr. Atubuga's, Professor Atubuga's presentation.
Obviously, if you're unable to solve the challenges, there could be, or we could have a disability.
Well, yes, the warning signs are on the, on the wall, and any one of us as citizens of this country is entitled to point to those warning signs, including Dr. Atubuga. So for me, I don't think that it is a sign that a person is inviting the military to subvert the constitutional order. I don't think he was inviting the military. He was just simply saying that, as part of the public democratic discourse, okay, the conditions for the overthrow of a constitutional government, are very clear on the wall.
And I think he never erred in his pronouncement.
I don't think so. I think that as part of our, right to freedom of expression, as I said, from the beginning, all right, we also, can comment, okay, on matters pertaining to, the democratic order. All right, matters that may lead to the subversion of the democratic order. I don't think that we are only our right to freedom of expression.
We shouldn't even talk about it at all. We've come far.
No.
In terms of our full Republican democracy.
You see, we cannot live under the illusion that everything.
Those who are calling for a coup d'etat, I know they think they want to help, the underprivileged. But you see, they don't know what really happened. They haven't had experience of a coup d'etat, so they really don't know what actually takes place. Now, in the confusion of a coup d'etat, necessarily under orders from the superiors, take vengeance on people. The harass people, or even sometimes go shoot them because they have had some conflict with those individuals. You are going to have a situation where you are going to hurt people, more than is happening at the moment. So I think that there are so many reasons why now we should be very cautious, and particularly in the context of the insecurity in the West African region, with the Al-Qaeda and all the others, and the interest of the Western countries in containing this insecurity. You are going to open up a can of worms. There is a difference between, speech and action. I would take action only in a situation where there is some preparation, some evidence of preparation to carry out a coup. If somebody is just talking, I just take it to be, the overexcitement, and I wouldn't go arresting them for that. If somebody says that he wants a coup, they say he's going to incite others. Really, you are getting into the realm of, extending logic and common sense. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to be.
Right. So let me begin with Dr. Arthur Kobina Kennedy, a physician and political activist who is joining us from his base in the United States of America, where he superintends over prestigious medical institution. Of course, he's not a person who is not known to Ghana. Ran one of the most decent campaigns, but like we see in this country, unless there's money in it, you don't get votes. Now, Doc, we have a wave of coups in Africa within the sub-region. And so the word coup has been on the lips of many. I have hosted people with expertise discussing these issues here on Newsfile. And some of them have made some pronouncements suggesting there are some indications, developments that are indications that we should not write off such an event, including Colonel Festus Aboagye, Professor Kwesi Enin, and the rest of them. Some of them, very clearly, the state has not taken the comments lightly. I am a witness to a situation where the state has actually invited some of them. And somehow they have insisted in the face of state authorities that they said absolutely nothing wrong. Do you find that people are calling for a coup in this country from the discussions so far?
Samson, good morning. I was wanted by the PNDC junta twice, and in both occasions, I ended up fleeing to exile and becoming a United Nations refugee. Suffered quite a bit, and up till now, I remember sadly the fact that I wasn't even able to attend my mother's birth. So this is very personal to me and some of us who, when we hear these things, we traumatic stress syndromes. It is painful. To the issue, I think, as you said, we should emphasize the word hysteria. Our Constitution clearly, while joining all of us to be interested in our security, also provides freedom of expression. I think that there is always a need to balance the two. And indeed, we have to be careful that we live under the rule of law, we be consistent regimes and across political parties. I think that a lot of the comments that people are reacting to in hysteria ought not to excite as much as they ought to excite what I would call sober reflection. If you remember, during the Arab Spring, in the period leading to the 2016 election, President Nana Akufo-Addo, then a candidate, referred to the Arab Spring and things that were happening therein and opined that if Ghanaians did not sit up well, bad things could happen to Ghana. When he said that, nobody thought he was calling for a coup, and quite appropriately so. Even recently, in the current comments that we have heard, in addition to Professor Tukuba, as you have rightly said, other people have commented, including even people like General Nino Mensah, who do have military experience. And yet, nobody is upset with them. It will seem that we are upset with only a certain kind of people, undermining our rule of credentials, which calls for consistency. Also, as a physician, I think that we should be careful about cause and effect. People who are planning to stage coups normally don't plan on radio. They don't make announcements on radio before they go and do whatever they do, because secrecy is of utmost sense. Also, returning to my roots as a physician, when you have high blood pressure, you don't because people around you keep mentioning high blood pressure. It's because you have bad genes and you don't eat well, and other associated factors like stress and other things. If somebody in your neighborhood says, gee, there are thieves in the neighborhood, so this, when you are going to bed, lock your main gate. I mean, that person is not calling for thieves to invade your sanctuary. I think that the sad effect of all this hysteria that you've rightly pointed out is that we miss an opportunity to have a sober, mature discussion about fundamental issues. I noticed that all these people that you quoted, who to invite for, all that, have all missed the essence of Prof. Atuguba's message about our economy, its mismanagement, and the fact that it is ships on the streets that, if we are not careful, may be exploited by adventurers. I wish this show was on that. I wish it was on, for example, what has happened to the money that has been borrowed by this government, what has happened to the help that we got from the IMF and the World Bank about COVID, why the E-levy is important, why the government and opposition are unable to cut a deal so that the E-levy will go into effect. We could have been criticizing Prof. Atuguba about whether his solutions were as profound and wide-ranging as indeed his analysis and diagnosis of the problem. Instead, we are wringing our hands and we're trying to turn this into a partisan issue. I think that we should ignore the messenger in these issues and discuss the message, because the message is profoundly important. And indeed, the president in France a few weeks ago was on air being interviewed, and he discussed these things very maturely and very admirably. And as he has had occasion to say, in order for a democracy to succeed, we should have what he called beautifully democratic accountability.
Well, Dr. Kwapong, you have taken time to write about what is going on in what you title Making Our Peace with Democracy. Why do you think that people like Professor Atuguba, who have suffered, their family and they themselves have seen at first hand and suffered, the outcomes of military regimes? His father was a headmaster, and on this occasion he speaks about how his father suffered unlawfully under the regime, how his mother, his whole family was literally torn apart, and sometimes they had to dig trenches and hide people in there and cover, with plywood and so on, so that soldiers who come around don't detect that people are around to arrest them. Why do you think that people who have this experience and know, like Professor Techua Menu say, we definitely must prefer an imperfect democracy to a military rule, why will it? We could be seeing a coup.
Good morning, Samson. Good morning, everyone. I mean, only the professor can truly explain the context and the reason behind those statements. But if you, I've had opportunity to read the full text of the speech, and I think from that initial statement of whilst nobody wants it, I am afraid that we may have one on our hands. And then he ties it into the dissertation of a colleague and friend of his that sort of talked about why coups succeed. And therefore, he makes that extrapolation and says, if these are the conditions under which a coup succeeds, economic challenges, and that if Ghana has won, then he's afraid that we may have won. So I don't, I'm sure, as you rightly said, the current conditions, the conversations we are having is driving people to begin to ask questions about the path that we are on as a country. But as you rightly said, for me, over the last couple of weeks, if you look at what has happened in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, the attempts in Guinea-Bissau, it raises concerns, right? I can understand why close within our neighbors, that if you're seeing this trend of military interventions, that it gives you cause to begin to worry.
Sorry to interrupt, but these countries, their democratic credentials don't compare at all with Ghana, correct?
Right. Yes, they don't. So let me share with you a few insights from the Afro-Barometer survey, and why, even within the context of some of these conversations about and the word coup being thrown around, why I keep making the case that generally I believe that Ghana has made its peace, or we are making our peace with democracy as the preferred form of government. So in the Afro-Barometer survey, there's a question that asks about preference for how we want to be governed. And it says democracy is preferable to any other forms of government. It doesn't matter. Sometimes non-democracy is preferable. And over 8 rounds of the survey, close to 8 out of 10 Ghanaians have regularly said democracy is preferable to any other form of government. Yes, some days it's come down a little bit, but the worst we've even seen on support for democracy is around 69%. So that's the first point of comfort for me. Then there's a question about how do we choose our leaders in Afro-Barometer. So the option is, let's do that through regular elections. And then the other statement is sometimes because elections produce bad outcomes, let's use other methods. Again, at least 80% of Ghanaians have regularly said in Afro-Barometer that let's choose our leaders through elections. The other point of comfort for me is our rejection of authoritarian regimes. So again, Afro-Barometer presents 3 non-democratic forms of government and says, would you approve or disapprove should they enter our political space to try and govern? Overwhelmingly, 80-something% reject one-party rule. They reject one-man rule. The other point of comfort for me is even among those in the Afro-Barometer survey who say that they are dissatisfied with the way democracy works, majority of them still prefer democracy to any other form of government. And the satisfaction question in AB is very important to me because it doesn't ask whether you're dissatisfied with democracy. It asks your dissatisfaction with the way democracy works. And so if you see the ups and downs in our satisfaction with democracy, it is not a dissatisfaction with democracy itself, but the way it is working. But having said all of that, there are also some what I call sore spots that I think as a society, we really need to have some honest conversations about the democratic path that we are on. And let me quickly point out 2 of those. So in Afro-Barometer, we have a question that asks about whether our elected representatives listen to citizens. And for members of parliament, when that question was first asked, only about 20% said our members of parliament listen either often or always, which has dropped to 11% in the most recent Afro-Barometer survey in 2019. The other sore spot for me is what I call the softening of our attitudes towards military rule, right? So in the first round of Afro-Barometer, about 89% of Ghanaians said they strongly disapprove of military rule. But that has dropped by almost 20%. So yes, 69% in 2019 still reject military rule, but I have been a little concerned that you see some kind of softening in our attitudes towards that. In the spring of 2017, the Pew Research Center in their Global Attitude Survey also asked about the different types of political systems, and one of it was if the military came into rule. And about 40-something% said it will be good or somewhat good. Right. So for me, those are the sore spots in our democratic dispensation. Lastly, if you look at some of the variables in Afro-Barometer that correlate with either support for democracy or satisfaction with the way democracy is working, you see that our support for democracy is driven by political variables. So if we trust in our democratic institutions, and that we perceive less incidences of corruption among our democratic institutions, our support for democracy grows. Our satisfaction with the way democracy is working, however, in Afro-Barometer is driven by the extent to which we believe governments are delivering on key social and economic goods, creating jobs, managing the economy. So I think for me, the bigger conversation now is how do you get our democracy to really deliver on the promise of democracy beyond just political goods like freedom of speech, the basic liberties that we are guaranteed. I mean, for me, I'm sure most people will share the sentiment that it's a good thing that we've had a relatively stable democratic dispensation, right? The Fourth Republic has lasted, since 1992. And I personally don't think anybody wants to see a disruption to it. But I think what everyone would want to see is how is it delivering on the basic economic challenges
right.
that
the CDD has had to lead discussions on topics including whether or not we are getting the dividends of our democracy, dividends. Now, my question really is, if we agree that our democratic credentials do not compare with those other countries that have suffered coup, and the others that are tipped as potential for coups, if you read most of the analysis, they take Ghana out, they take Nigeria out. You have also heard conversations about youth who are getting disenchanted, and that, like the reference was made earlier, you may see some sort of spring. So why at all should we not be concerned when the word coup is mentioned so many times in the last few months?
I don't think we shouldn't be concerned, right? I think it's an issue that we should take seriously, right? We should begin to have a sober reflection on why we are hearing this word being thrown around. Are people really agitating for one? Or as Dr. Kennedy said, is it just a question of hysteria born out as a result of frustration with the economic challenges that people are facing, right? So yes, we have to be concerned, and especially if you look at what is happening in the sub-region, you cannot overlook some of these statements, references to coup that are being made. But again, for me, the bigger conversation is, given the hysteria, the agitations, the concerns, the legitimate challenges that citizens are facing, how do we ensure that we address those concerns? I have never, I'm too young to experience, to really recount what a military coup looks like. The first, in 79, I was only 5. In 81, I was only 7. Right? So I don't have much to say in terms of what a military coup looks like. But from conversations with my mom, people in my mom's generation, I don't think coup brings anybody warm, fuzzy feelings. We've also seen how the military has governed and what they've been able to deliver. So for me, again, the issue is, how do we have a conversation about how democracy must deliver? We've come too far to allow anything to disrupt this journey that we are on. And like I keep saying, for me, in Afro-Barometer, the signals that I see is that we've made our peace, or we are making our peace with it. We just want to make sure that it really delivers beyond just the basic political goods.
Okay. I'll return to you on the question where it does appear consistently. Researchers and advocates like you suggest that there is something that is missing in our democratic experience, and that has to be fixed. Otherwise, it does appear the democracy is hijacked by partisanship and parochial interests and not delivering the dividends to the people. But Professor Appiagyei, is it Chinua Achebe who said that an old woman is always uneasy when dry bones are mentioned in a proverb? What do you see happening? At the mention of coup, we are jittery, we are 65 years, we have an enviable democracy, What's wrong with us?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the question. Yes, I think our reaction to some of these pronouncements about the possibility of a coup is somehow exaggerated, and there's some sort of overreaction. But at the same time, we also need to look at the other side of the fence. So addressing the first point about the overreaction, I think that for me, a coup is not or shouldn't be part of our political governance system. And it is clear from the Afro-Barometer survey and other surveys that have been done that certainly Ghana in particular is not a coup-prone zone or a place where people would want to take coup seriously. So
you have said on this show that this democracy is a sham.
Yes, I'm coming to that. And so it comes down to what kind of democracy we are having and the kind of indicators that we should have to say that the democracy has degraded to such an extent that we don't have any other option but a coup. And so certainly the democratic structure that we have here is indeed a sham, and I repeat that. And what we have is a form of legalized predation. In other words, we make the laws that will allow for stealing and plunder of resources. And anytime this thing happens, we resort to the law. So long as we follow the law, then we are covered. And so that is one weak issue with democracy, that the kind of democracy we have in the country. But I don't think that conditions have deteriorated to the extent that a coup will solve our problem. I've already mentioned that I'm not in favor of coups. As a human rights person, I think that coup shouldn't come into the picture. However, there are situations where a coup may be justified, and I gave four grounds for that. First of all, the means of change of government through peaceful means and through the ballot box is completely closed. And so there's refusal to change government, and there is no opportunity for the citizens to change government through peaceful means. That is one. Second, there are serious human rights violations that are being perpetrated by the government with the support of some security agencies which are aligned specifically to the government. Three, the instability is brewing as a result of these two earlier factors I mentioned. And four, the international community, whether it is the UN, the AU, ECOWAS, and so on, are not doing their job well to be able to control the situation and ensure that there is change in the way democracy is being run in those countries. In such a situation, then the military may come in to change the government, but not take over the reins of government, but return to the barracks. So the military are on the side of the people, and therefore they see themselves as defenders of the constitution. They do that, they return to barracks. That is the only situation where I will support a coup d'etat. And looking at the indicators for Ghana, I don't think we are there. We are not there at all. Every 4 years, you have the opportunity to go to the polls and change governments. And we have been able to change governments on a regular basis, at least on an 8-year basis after 2 terms by two of the big political parties. So we are not there in that respect. Human rights generally have been respected, and we don't have that kind of instability you may talk about. And Ghana also plays a major role in the AU, ECOWAS, and so on. So I don't think that the indicators tick for us to say that there's a need for a coup d'etat. Having said that,
all right.
The other side of the question is that the coup language is becoming very loud in the country, in Africa in particular. And we have situations where coup d'etat have actually happened, and the people have gone to hail the coup d'etat. But the question is, were those indicators present? For example, did the soldiers side the people and therefore return to barracks? No. And so it makes the whole coup d'etat thing very dubious and suspicious, as have taken place in Mali, Burkina Faso, and so on. The soldiers will say it is because of insecurity. At least that is a song that have been sung in Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and so on. But in the end, what do? They go for Wagner. That is that Russia army contractor group to provide security for them. And so it creates a scenario where you have mercenarism coming back into the picture as a means of unconstitutional change in government. And that is very worrying, because right now, if you look at the international order or the world order, it is changing with Russia invading Ukraine, because Russia was trying to, or has been trying to, assert its presence in Africa. So far, Wagner is in about 10 African countries: Central African Republic, Mozambique, Mali, Niger, and other places. So, and they are representing Russia. And if we go back into history, the USSR have not helped in making, creating peace in the country, on the continent. When there was this rivalry between the East and the West, and Africans were left in the middle as pawns that were played like in a chess game. And in the end, respect for democracy became very low. And therefore, coup d'etat became a means of changing government, until later mercenarism also came into the picture and so on. So that is where my worry is. My worry is not the fact that the economic indicators are not good in the country and it could be a basis for a coup. Right. But the fact that coming from outside, when there's a coup d'etat, the coup makers are very likely to get support from outside. And the Wagner group is known for protecting regimes and suppressing dissent. And that is where the worry should be located.
Now, wearing your legal lenses, you say this coup thing is exaggerated or over-exaggerated. So what does the law say about it?
Sorry.
Do you agree with... I think
there's a freeze.
Yes, I think you are back.
Yes.
Do you agree with Dr. Arthur Kennedy when he says that we seem to be breaching people's right to speech, freedom of expression, in the manner we as a state are approaching the mention of the word coup? What is coup? What does the Constitution say about it? What does our criminal law say about it? Is it that simple that once you make, like Dr. Kennedy says, nobody announces that they are going to have a coup? Once you make such a pronouncement, then you have infracted the law?
Yes. First of all, I think the country's laws respect freedom of expression. We have signed various international human rights treaties that also call for respect for freedom of expression. But we also know that there's a limit to the enjoyment of the right to freedom of expression, subject to public security and so on. And so we need to find the balance between what you can say and what you cannot say, where you can say it, and under what circumstances you can say it. I think that there is that kind of fear. I don't know whether it is because of our political history, partly so, because definitely the records on coup d'etat and the impact it had on the socioeconomic life, religious life, and so on of the people are very bad. So we don't want to go back there. And there's also the concern that as coup d'etat are springing up around us, that may also trigger or instigate soldiers to pick up arms and go and fight. But it's not as easy as that, or it's not as simple as that. I think that we should be measured in what we say, so that hysteria and that concern will not be created. But those who speak are within the bounds of the law. When we are talking about coup d'etat in the country, the law is clear, the Constitution is clear that we will not change government through a coup d'etat. And the only way that probably a coup d'etat will be justified is where there is another coup d'etat to overthrow a coup d'etat that has taken place. Because the Constitution says any measure that we take to restore the constitutional order will be respected, and even people will be rewarded for that.
Right.
Yeah.
You are referring to Article 3. Article 3, Clause 2 of the Constitution. Maybe you should just go to Clause 3. It says, any person who, by himself or in concert with others, by any violent or other unlawful means, suspends or overthrows or abrogates this Constitution, or any part of it, or attempts to do any such act, or aids and abets in any manner any person referred to in paragraph A of this clause, commits the offense of high treason, and shall, upon conviction, be sentenced to suffer death. Is that what is meant by coup?
Yes, according to the Ghanaian Constitution, the 1992 Constitution.
Okay. And then in Article 19, Clause 17, which is repeated in our Criminal and Other Offences Act, says that subject to Clause 18 of this article, treason shall consist only, A, in levying war against Ghana or assisting any state, person, or inciting or conspiring with other person, any person, to levy war against Ghana, or in attempting by force of arms or other violent means to overthrow the organs of government established by or under this Constitution, or in taking part or being concerned in or inciting or conspiring with any person to make or take part or be concerned in any such attempt. Is that what this Constitution also means by a coup?
Yes, I'll agree with you on that.
An act which aims at procuring by constitutional means an alteration of the law or the policies of government shall not be considered as an act calculated to overthrow the organs of government. Of course, there is another provision similar. So if you take these provisions, what would you say are the limitations?
Limitations in what sense, please?
In the conduct that gets people in trouble for the use of the word coup.
Oh, okay. I think that merely using the word coup or making some analysis and concluding that there's a possibility of a coup should not fall into the realm of instigating an overthrow of the government. It should certainly go beyond that. Of course, in criminal law, when we are dealing with a treason case, it comes down to not just the actual act, but if there is abetment or some form of related act, you can be caught in the web. But having said that, if you look at Professor Tuguba's comments and the speech he gave, I don't think it falls to that level where you can say that he's preparing to cause a coup d'etat. He is expressing his view on a subject matter and relating that to the possibility of a coup. And if you look at our political history, that has happened before, okay? But we are saying that in this time and age, after having 30 years of democracy, we don't think those indicators are there yet. Of course, he is right on talking about the economic circumstances that we live in. People are really struggling to make ends meet. But has it reached the threshold where people feel so marginalized, people so feel disenfranchised, and that situation has been taken advantage of by the military or some other force to say that we're using as a basis to cause instability or cause a coup d'etat? I don't think we are there yet. So
yeah.
It is
by the reading of the law, coup is not exactly a speech offense, but
yes,
when the law says inciting, if you are inciting, to suggest that the country could be ripe, may be ripe for, because of these indicators, can that not amount to suggesting, as we have heard some say, suggesting to the military that you should come in?
I don't think so. If you look at, for example, one of the communiques or statements issued by Occupy Ghana at the end of last year, with reference to the hula baloo that happened in Parliament, they also mentioned coup d'etat, that if there's a coup d'etat, parliamentarians should first know that the first order that will be disrupted is Parliament. Parliament will no more exist, and so they should be careful how they behave themselves in Parliament. And so, are we saying that we're going to hold Occupy Ghana accountable for that statement? Or are we saying that they are inciting...
Is that not completely different from the present case?
I don't see much difference between the two, because indirectly they were also saying that if Parliament doesn't behave, there could be a coup d'etat. So if we look at...
apart from incitement, the law says if you are being concerned in, what does that mean? So that I don't get myself into trouble for using the word coup. It could mean that I'm concerned in, is that it?
Yes, certainly we can be concerned about something. And I'm sure people are concerned about the current democratic order and the way it is being run in the country. So I don't think that should be a basis for the law to come down on us and say that we are concerned, so that is a problem. But there should be other factors in that should add up to that. And the preparation and having identified a particular group that the message is targeted, and then we see some instability brewing around, then we can say that the indicators are coming together for the law to say that, yes, we have a situation where this person is trying to instigate a coup d'etat. But I don't think that we are there yet. So there's the need to not to worry or get overly hyped. And I think rather it is the government and the reaction of government in particular that is causing this coup thing to be blown out of proportion, because the more government officials talk about it, it shows that there is some sort of concern or something to worry about. And therefore people also begin to react that way. And it instigates the foot soldiers and others, the serial callers and so on, to come in and also make such pronouncements without really having the basis for it. And that, to me, is a bigger worry. When somebody makes a statement, we review it carefully. It doesn't amount to a serious infringement of the law, and it's within the bounds of academic freedom of expression. We should just let it pass. Or if you give a comment at all, not in a manner that we politicize it, and therefore people sitting...
Let me ask Dr. Arthur Kennedy, if you don't think, Doc, that allowing some of these comments to pass, so to speak, may rather encourage more of it and then get to the point where it could constitute what the law prohibits. That is, being concerned in or inciting a coup.
Yeah, Samson, I think that our concerns are misdirected. I have heard very impressive citations of Afro-Barometer polls and all that kind of thing. But it is also true that all these countries in West Africa where Afro-Barometer always showed high disapproval for coups, showed support when the coups happened. So we should be very careful and very sober. It is also true that Nkrumah was quite popular. When he was overthrown, that coup was supported. Buzia was popular. The Liman administration was popular. And across Africa, when you talk to young intellectuals, The models they keep citing, admiring Kagame in Rwanda, which we know isn't to write home about democracy. And I respectfully disagree with the eminent professor when he talks about Ghana is not there yet. Prof, you just said our democracy is a sham. If it is a sham, why are we not there yet? Chile was an uninterrupted democracy for 100 years until the 1973, and yet it was supported because there had been misgovernance for 2 years. Those in government who are expressing alarm and concern are misdirecting their efforts. Yes, we have a chance to vote every 4 years, but it is change that does not lead to change. I suggest that if they are concerned, they should start governing better. When we have parliamentarians turning parliament into a boxing arena, when we have governments that won't account for funds, when we have broke men who get into government and are millionaires within years, people are unhappy. And sooner or later, like the woman who says, I don't want to leave my marriage, after some time, they get desperate and say, we should be careful that when we see all this reassuring Afro-Barometer, we get to vote. There must be better governance. And the truth of the matter is that while we prefer democracy, our democracy is not delivering. Who looks at what we are seeing in front of us and thinks our democracy is delivering? The fact that we get to vote every 4 years does not mean we have an effective functioning democracy. Just a few weeks ago, Samson, you came here to tell us prison conditions where a prisoner has 101 CD and 80 pesos and prisoners are packed like sardines. We just talked a few weeks ago about a mother who needed fed to Kolebu, and people had an argument with her husband about buying fuel, and the woman ended up dying. Nobody said anything. And this is in a country where when big people are sick, we hire ambulances and transfer them abroad. We send them abroad for the best of care. I think that we need to sit up. We are sitting on a volcano. And when somebody says that, it does not mean that they want a coup. It means that they are asking those who are empowered to deliver development. Democracy.
And this apparently is not being said now. The Daily Guide reported heading coup d'etat imminent in Ghana, Captain Kumsin. And this was in 2013. Now, I just like to read a portion of it. It says, a retired officer of the Ghana Armed Forces, Captain Budu Kumsin, believes prevailing conditions in the country make the staging of a coup d'etat imminent. This, according to him, was because, quote, the blatant abuse of state wealth by political operatives can trigger something like this, coupled with the political stalemate in society, unquote. Quote again, the profligate or reckless abuse of government funds, the political stalemate, the lack of focus of security operatives because of political stalemate, and the politics that is in the system. I think we have to be very careful, unquote. He noted, insisting that, quote, there is real danger, unquote. He made the statement during an interview with Accra-based Oman FM. He emphasized that it was wrong for anybody to downplay the possibility of an uprising in the country. Captain Budu Kumsin, who is Chief Operations Officer with the UT Group of Companies, said, quote, I have heard so many people talking about the possibility of coup, which means coup is frightening us, unquote. He therefore stressed the need for government and the security agencies to, quote, act very fast and diffuse it. He said a few other things, including that let us know that they are a function of the society. So if the society is talking coup, they are also part of society. they can think coup, unquote. In the bad old days, quote, in the bad old days, the consternation of circumstances on the ground would have triggered a coup d'etat long ago, unquote. He said a few other things. Don't you agree with him that what he said in 2013 should be applicable now? That the more you hear that word, the more, it gets into the psyche of people, and that could lead to incitement?
Yeah, it could, Samson, but the point is that we are confusing the symptoms for the disease. What he said then is important, and what is happening now is important. Our reaction, though, should not be just to fear the mention of the word. It's to look at the underlying conditions that are leading to mentioning of the word. I think that our democracy needs to deliver. We must guard the public purse. I'm quoting the president. People must see that parliament is effective and working. People must see that there is accountability. People must see that when things happen to supposed nobodies, like the woman who died in the ambulance, and powerful people are concerned. And those things and responsiveness to those concerns will do more to abate the talk of coups than the hysteria we are showing in hauling people before bodies and putting them before courts and in prison and all that kind of thing. We should not confuse the symptoms for the disease. The disease is that our democracy is not delivering, and it should deliver better end products for the people.
Now to Dr. Kwapong, the question I had asked earlier, if in the conversations that institutions, formidable democracy institutions like the CDD have organized about the democracy not delivering the benefits to the people, what is the alternative? Certainly not coup.
Definitely not coup. In my opinion, the alternative is not a coup, is not some other non-democratic form of government. But at the same time, I also agree that at the end of the day, citizens want certain basic things, right? And when they talk about we want good governance, they want to see good governance translated into key things like access to, good health facilities, good educational facilities, jobs, all of those things. In 2009, there was an interesting piece in the Journal of Democracy that talked about the consequences of democratization. And one of the things that the author pointed out was that, look, a time is going to come where citizens are going to start asking, what are we really getting out of these democratic transitions that we have seen since 1989, 1990, thereabout. And as Dr. Kennedy said, I think we are getting to that point. Perhaps it is sometimes out of that frustration of feeling that we are not, quote unquote, getting anything out of democracy that makes a section of society begin to tinker with the idea that if democracy wouldn't give us these things and some other form of government would give it to us, then why not? But at the same time, we have also experienced military regimes, not just in Ghana, but throughout the sub-Saharan African region. And we've had those same concerns about economic challenges, misgovernance issues, etc., etc. So for me, as I keep making the argument that we are making our peace with democracy, that journey to the making of our peace with democracy is also fraught with some very real challenges. I don't want to give it all out because I'm working on a book using 8 rounds of Afro-Barometer on that. But you do also see some warning signs that I think at some point we need to have a national conversation about, okay, after 30 years of this, can we have a sober reflection? Can we sit back? Can we ask ourselves, how far have we come? What are the real challenges? Because you do see some you do see some real challenges, even as I keep arguing that we are making our peace with democracy. But I honestly don't think that the alternative is something, quote unquote, non-democratic. Well, one last thing I would want to point out, which I keep saying are some of the warning signals from Afro-Barometer. You do see over the last 3 rounds that now we are in double digits where people are saying sometimes non-democracy is preferable. It's still low, around 14, 15%, but you see that trend moving out of single digits into now a double digit, right? You don't want that to grow. You don't, I hope that we don't ever get to a point where enough citizens begin to question the value of a democratic form of government. For me, if anything at all, the conversation and the attempts should always be, now that we've said this is the way we want to govern ourselves, how do we ensure that it actually delivers on its promise, whatever the promise of democracy is?
Okay. Professor Appiagyei, so what should be the attitude of the state and the police more particularly going forward? Very briefly, so that we go to our next issue. I recall that when Captain Budukumsin, I have quoted, made those statements in 2013, he was invited by the police and questioned for hours. At the time, I think Ken Ofori-Atta also made some statements. He was also being sought after to explain himself, even though those were done a bit quietly, so we didn't seem to have heard too much about it. What should be their attitude?
I think the state should take these comments seriously and realize that there is something amiss with our democratic process and how they are governing. They should listen and not just find every reason, every opportunity to respond to every criticism that comes up and to try and trivialize it and say that that is not true, because that begins to create a snowballing effect and the disenchantment will grow, and then we can get to the coup that we are all trying to avoid. And so the police should be more educated about how they react to these situations. And fortunately, we have a new IGP who I think we all have a lot of confidence in. He should up his game in this regard. I'm not sure COP Lampare has performed very well in this regard. And so he should make sure that if such comments are made, they are dealt with on the quiet and they know the line to draw if it's just an expression of comments or whether they are really the ingredients that will cause a coup d'etat. Thank you.
If I can ask all of you for just some 30 seconds to give me a response. You prefer an imperfect democracy to a military rule, right, Professor Appiagyei?
Certainly, but an imperfect democracy can be better. It can be made more perfect. There's no system that is perfect, but it can be made perfect. And we have the capability to make it better. So much as we will prefer an imperfect democracy to a coup d'etat, we should not accept an imperfect democracy. But the answer of not accepting an imperfect democracy is not a coup d'etat. It should be rather a better democracy.
You ever consider that a coup is ever possible in our democracy, having come this far?
It's possible. We cannot rule that out. I already mentioned that it's not only internal factors, but also external. And so the internal factors, if we allow things to deteriorate, it could get there. And the external factors, I mentioned Russia and its creeping influence into Africa. And we should be worried about that. Because when it comes to that, the West also will no more be interested in democracy. And then they will be interested in more of their interest than having friends. Okay. And we should also be minded of China. China is also not interested in democracy. It is dishing out loans and grants without looking at the political factors. And all these are areas of concern.
Okay. Dr. Arthur Kennedy, same two questions to you. You prefer an imperfect democracy to a military regime. Definitely, you have suffered under a military regime. And have you ever thought that a coup is ever possible in this country?
Yes, I prefer an imperfect democracy to a military regime, but I think a coup is more possible than we give it credence when I look at the example of Chile, which had been an uninterrupted democracy for 100 years and became a military dictatorship after 2 years of bad governance. As John Kennedy said, those who make peaceful change impossible make revolution inevitable. We should always be working to make our democracy more responsive to the needs of people. And democracy should be far, far more than just getting to vote for which thief should loot from the public treasury every 4 years.
Thank you. Dr. Kwapong, what do you also say?
Just like the others have said, I prefer an imperfect democracy to a military regime or even a civilian dictatorship. But I also share the sentiments that even as we express preference for a democratic form of governance, we have to continuously work hard to ensure that it is delivering so that we never get to the point where we have to ask the question, what is democracy even good for anyway, that perhaps we are even better off without it? I just hope that we never get there. And to the second question, is a coup ever possible in Ghana? I hope not. I really hope that I'm right when I say that we are making a good peace with democracy, and as we continue to improve, that thought of a military incursion may never happen. That's really my hope.
Something must be wrong with me, because I think that it's never possible because of how we have built our systems up to this point. Thank you all, gentlemen, so very much for joining us on Newsfile. It has been revealing. It's been a lot of depth to share. Thank you so very much. This is Newsfile. We take a quick break. When we return, we ask what is going to happen. Now, we know that your e-levy, if it is passed, it is intended to borrow more to the historic debts. But do you prefer that to the present circumstance where everything is going up? Transport fares are up, the cedi is being flogged by the dollar, LPG up, fuel prices running up the roof. And now workers are asking for more in an economy that is literally broke. We'll be right back.
A fresh graduate from the university into the Ghana Education Service is taking less than 1,600 a month. A fresh graduate from the university into the Ghana Education Service is taking less than 1,600 a month.
So that's less than that?
Yes, and then the headmaster of Presec and Achimota do not have their salaries more than 3,500.
Oh, please.
No, I'm telling you. You can check.
Presec?
The Presec.
A headmaster?
Yeah, the headmaster.
So this is take home, right?
That is take home, yes.
Less than 3,000?
Yes.
Less than 3,000?
Yes.
You're kidding me?
No, I'm telling you the fact. You can check.
Realize the case, how things have increased, it affects we a lot because we transfer our goods and materials. Maybe right now we are coming from the north. So we just came, realized the case, we just realized that things increase all of a sudden. So the budgets we made, everything has increased totally. Even we are stranded now.
Food and everything go high, so it's not easy. Look at the way I'm sweating.
Now the price is high, and going to places now it won't be easier. Yes. So it's not really helping. Yeah.
Now, I need about 1,000 cedis to inject into my business. Those days, I could save and feed my children. But now, it has gotten so bad that I cannot even save.
They say your light light 50 Ghana and 1 week in Bonasa.
Right. Joining us for this second segment, very important also. We have Gabriel Kumi, who is the Vice Chairman, LPG Marketing Companies Association of Ghana. Joining us via Zoom, Dr. Kwabena Nyakun Otu, Chief Economist and Director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, Trades Union Congress, TUC, and Senyo Kosihosi, is CEO, Ghana Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. Gabi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. And this show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneur leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. Waylead Properties, home is where one starts. CBG, we stand with you. Edlom Housing, where spacious homes cost less. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Rehoboth Properties, quality housing for all. So I don't even know how to start this discussion, but it must be really difficult. Let me start with Dr. Kwabena Nyakun Otu, Chief Economist and Director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, Trades Union Congress. Doc, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good.
Now, as far as labor is concerned, where you sit at the TUC, irrespective of the hikes in almost everything and the inflation situation, the economy is stressed. So should anybody be asking for more because what they take home is devalued as a result of the situation?
Thank you, and good morning to your listeners. So you are right. It's a difficult situation. The economy is stressed, we agree. But that economy is stressed if you look at the government budget. The deficit is rising. Everybody knows that debt situation appears unsustainable. We know that. But as we indicated in Poe, the deficit, you can also see it on the worker side. So if you take your pay and all the things you need to spend your pay on, your rent is going up, food items, prices are going up. So when you use, say, for example, the SASCA service expenditure data, you can also estimate the deficit on the worker side. Okay. So as I've indicated earlier on one of your programs, Joy FM program, that we are now confronted with two deficits: macro deficit, as you see in the budget, but also micro level deficit, as you see in the pocket of workers. So if you have these two deficits, then something must give. We must judge or we must dialogue as to how we actually make sure that we deal with both deficits. But as of now, the analysis and the narrative is only on the government side. Workers are also suffering, and it has to be. Their suffering also have to be taken on board as we try to address the current economic challenges.
The finance minister has been talking passionately about burden sharing. When at all will it be okay for labor to make sacrifices so that the economy will get back, on a good footing?
I mean, that's a good question. If you remember, this is not the first time Labour is being called upon to make sacrifices. So in 2014, in similar situations, we had to take a COLA instead of a salary increase. And the understanding was that, okay, you do this sacrifice, you give us, the manager of the economy, the opportunity to be able to put things on a sound footing, and then we will all enjoy. Here we are after 8 years of that sacrifice. And then Labour is being asked to make another sacrifice again. So this is also the time for us to be able to look hard at the economy, the way it's managed, and to say that even if you are not able to meet all the demands we put on the table, it means that some sacrifices on our part will be in order. But what will be in for us 2-3 years down the line? Will we be asked to do another sacrifice? So this is the time we need to be more deeply involved in the way the economy is managed and in the way resources and the public purse is shared across board.
It doesn't even matter that we are signaled to brace up for the worst, as the cedi, like I say, is getting so flogged by the dollar and other currencies.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look hard at the wage situation, for example, you look hard at the numbers on the single spine, you ask yourself, will a 10%, 15%, or 20% salary increase, will it allow us to be able to address all the runaway cost of living, the fuel price increases, and its cascading effect on food prices, on rent, on everything? Sometimes even the Kaya people increases their charge using the dollar as the reason for increasing it. So it's a difficult situation.
Is that not an exaggeration? You're kidding me. That a Kaya will index the dollar? Oh, Jesus Christ. This is a joke. Please tell me the joke.
Okay, I'll tell you the story, the full story after this program, if you want to hear. So you look hard at the numbers. We are already sacrificing. So it really doesn't matter anybody asking us to sacrifice. Workers are already sacrificing. Nobody talks about the deficit on the part of workers. All the big discussions are around the government deficit and all that. Yeah. So we are already in the sacrifice. We are sacrificing already. Okay.
The Speaker of Parliament has indicated that if we are not careful, government may not be able to pay salaries in the next 3 months or so. Is it not better to get ready to buy the bullets, to burden share, and to get something small at the end of the month rather than at a point where government cannot pay salaries?
I'm not sure I can agree with the Speaker that government will not be able to pay salaries. That one, I'm definitely positive that government will pay the salaries. But on the other side, for us to be able to get out of the woods, you need a level of motivation for workers. Because the salary levels today are so demotivating, at least when you compare to the cost of living. There are some salaries, if you arrange it with the transport cost from home to the office, it's not sufficient. So we definitely have to have a conversation in which government says that, okay, let me do something to push in workers. It might not go to the full horse, to the full expectations. Okay. And that is where then you formally see that workers are sacrificed. But the question we ask is, what will be, to what point, to what end would that sacrifice be? In 2-3 years, are we going to see much more better salaries commensurate with the cost of living, or we will be back to square one?
That's interesting, because we have been here before, where the cedi, was being labeled as the worst performing currency on the continent. We are back at that place. It is being labeled the same way, even though some people disagree. I have not seen the figures by which, the evidence by which they make that disagreement. Now, let me ask Gabby. Now, so as we are going through all of this, people are displaying the cost of their LPG on social media all over the place. An MP said he took his cylinder to the station, the service station in the morning, and I think there was a queue or something, so he preferred that it be there when he closes from work. By the time he closed from work and got there, the price has shot up, and he was bewildered. What's going on? Can't you also help?
Something we are helping, but there's a extent to which you can help. I think we all know what is happening in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, which has shot up the crude oil price to about $115 per barrel. Unfortunately, our city has also not been doing too well for the past few months. These two are the main factors that has contributed in shooting up the price of LPG to that level. Now, LPG is being sold at 10 cedis per kilo. What that means is that your 14.5 kg, you need about 145 Ghana cedis to be able to fill that cylinder. Samson, the LPG marketing companies have been making a certain call over the years. In 2018, Cabinet set an objective for consumption of LPG in Ghana. Of all the petroleum products, I think LPG is the only one that has been singled out, and the president and his cabinet has tasked us, Ghanaian, to double consumption of LPG within the next 10 years. But something we all know that LPG is a product with an elastic demand. It's very highly price sensitive. Any single peso that you add onto the price of LPG goes a long way to slow down consumption. So over the years, we have been calling for government to, as a first step, as a first commitment towards realizing that noble objective, to consider removing taxes on LPG. In fact, this has been our call for the past, we've been very consistent and persistent about this call for the past 4 years. Because we believe LPG must be made tax-free. If you look at our West Africa sub-region, even Cote d'Ivoire is paying subsidies for LPG. Most West Africa countries, and indeed African countries, are paying subsidy because of a strategic...
What's the component of the tax, and how does it affect the cost?
Currently, we are paying about 16-18%, between 16-18% as tax on LPG. We don't believe that removing the taxes will mean everybody in Ghana is going to consume LPG. But it's a very good step, because as I did indicate, every peso reduction is price sensitive. I mean, it's an elastic demand. So when you reduce price, you are likely to get more people into the consumption net. And that is what we've been calling on government to do over the past 4 years. But we've not been very successful at that. And unfortunately, this Russia overtaking Ukraine came up and unfortunately shot up the crude oil price and the price of finished product. And unfortunately, our cedi is also not doing too well against the major currencies.
So give us a picture. What were the prices like before now, and what are you projecting in the absence of the subsidy?
If you look at over the past 1 year, LPG price has gone up by over 70% since January last year. Just last window, which began on the 16th of February to the end of February, we were selling it at, your cylinder was being sold at about 130 Ghana cedis. And this window, we've shot up to 145. The experts are predicting that crude oil could go as high as $130, $140 per barrel. If that happens, and we are not able to stabilize our cedi, then we are afraid within the next few months, you should be buying LPG beyond 200 Ghana cedis per your household bottle. And that is almost somebody's monthly salary. We live in a country where the ordinary Ghanaian is taking home 600, 700, 800 cedis. How do you expect such a person to take as much as 15, 20, 25% of his salary to buy just LPG for the month? We believe that is so strong.
We have heard complaints about people who are going and now buying in tots. I mean, that's strange to hear.
Samson,
is that not even dangerous?
It is. Our survey indicate that when you take the urban areas of Accra, Kumasi, Takoradi, about 50% of the people who walk to any LPG outlet are not able to fill their cylinders. And this is not a survey we need any professor to do. You can send your reporter to any LPG outlet around here. Let them observe the buying pattern for just 1 hour, and you come back to confirm what I'm saying. When you go to the rural areas, it's worse. It's worse. It goes as high as 80-90%.
I'll return to talk about the implications for our environment, more importantly, and what you think ought to be done urgently, and whether you think what you are calling for is feasible. Senyor Osi is with us. Thank you very much for joining us, Senyor. Okay, I understand that we have a little problem with your Zoom. Once we get it corrected, we can hear from Senyor Osi, who is the CEO of the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. Of course, Gabi is talking about the tax component. They have also been, talking about the tax component for fuel. Now because of the behavior of the CD, also means that the people at Bosokai will tell us, and magazine will tell us about the cost of spare parts and the rest of them, and transport fares just went up. When will they go up again? How is this going to impact generally on cost of living? It's already biting. Senor, we have you back. Okay. Once we get Senor's line clear, we'll get to hear from him. So, first, what are the dangers in the pattern of buying that you speak about now, and the implications for the country?
Let me start with the implications, Samson. As I did indicate, in 2018, Cabinet gave a directive to the Ministry of Energy and MP to ensure that at presently we are at 25% penetration level, to ensure that within the next 10 years, we double that to 50%. That clearly sums up the importance of LPG. As I said, it's the only petroleum product that has a target in terms of its consumption. So it again buttresses the need for us that it's very important that we consume more LPG. Now, the experts are again saying that Ghana's forest is the fastest depleting in West Africa. And what are we depleting the forest for? It's for firewood and charcoal. If you go to the northern part of Ghana, charcoal is the biggest industry in northern Ghana, not even farming. Because when you talk about commercial basis, a lot of people do farming in the north, but they do it for subsistence. It's on subsistence basis, just for the family to eat. But if you talk about commercialization, it's quite limited. But if you look at charcoal, it's the biggest industry in the northern part of our country. And that will mean a further depletion of our forest and our environment. Now, all our river bodies continue to dry.
I don't like to hear that. You said fastest
depleting, in terms of depletion, Ghana's forest is the fastest.
In West Africa?
In West Africa, yeah. You could check.
Are we that terrible in?
It's terrible.
In almost everything.
Samson, somewhere last year I was driving from Kumasi to Tamale. And I started counting the number of trucks that have loaded charcoal and it's coming down. By the time I got to Tamale, I had counted 52 vehicles. One day. Not even one day, just within 5-6 hours. 52 trucks, care trucks loaded with charcoal coming down south. As I said, charcoal,
the way to reduce that is cheap gas.
Cheap LPG. That is the only way out. People must eat. If he can't afford LPG, he has an alternative in charcoal and wood fuel. So they'll go and cut the wood, they'll go and
Okay. Now hold on briefly for me. The bad news, I can't take too much of it. Senor, so look, what we are seeing in the fuel market, on the fuel market, and of course, Doc will also come in. What we are seeing on the fuel market, what's your estimation? It shouldn't get worse, should it?
Sorry, Samson, I just have bad news for you. I think it's likely going to get worse. But things would recede pretty soon, I believe, and maybe come back to the general 100 area. I think a few months ago, right on your show, I indicated that there are various factors. Prior to the Ukraine situation, which I think traders are trying to milk, because technically we have not had any change in the. We've not actually had any change in the supply situation globally. Russia's volumes are not out of the market; they are still in the market. But traders are speculating around the possible implication that exists. My take is that we are still going to have to deal with high fuel prices, either forced by our general macroeconomic situation driven by the FX, or we are going to have to cope with high commodity prices. I want to comment a bit about the discussion on the labor situation and government situation. I think Kwabena is perfectly right. We've heard the government narrative. We've also heard about a bit of the labor narrative, which may not have been as strong as can be. But the reality of the matter is what it is. The country is broke. You can't spend 95% of your total domestic revenue on salaries, wages, or compensation for public labor, and then the other part on interest payments. It's not a sustainable feature, and borrowing hasn't reduced. And if it hasn't reduced, it means that we are going to have to pay more interest. And then the other part of it is that if you look at our current yield curve and also look at the yields on the market on a daily basis, interest is rather increasing, and government is paying more on that. So there's a need for us to really find a way to either boost our revenue or reduce our expenditure. It's easy for everybody to talk about labor and labor having to sacrifice. But the question is that what are our governments doing? I don't think that our governments typically show the way appropriately. And this is time for government to live by example. The authenticity would have to change. We have to really let people realize that while we claim that things are difficult, we are living lives that show that things are difficult. You can't claim that things are difficult and travels are just what we see it to be. You can't claim things are difficult, and we are seeing our politicians and our appointees buying new SUVs, out trying to show who has the latest Toyota V8 and who hasn't. We can't talk about things being broke and not talk about rationalizing the size of government. All right, government is too big. It's as simple as that. Show something and then get labor to really come along. But you may be saying the right thing, but you should start living by example. As a father in my home, if things are difficult, I don't drive the big SUV. I let people know that we all have to scale down. I mean, I go in a small car. And besides going in the small car, I mean, I may not be drinking my cognac every evening. I may just stick to a beer or just drink my water and drink tea or something. But you can't live large and at the same time ask those like labor who we all admit are highly underpaid to be sacrificing. What example are you showing? So we all have some contribution to make for us to really navigate this difficult economic situation we find ourselves. In any case, it is the government of the day, it is the appointees of the day who are responsible for the situation.
Your friend at the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers Ghana, COPEG, has sounded that, I'm talking about Duncan Amoah, that fuel prices will hit 9 cedis per liter before this month ends.
I'm sure you know I don't speculate much on actual prices anymore, so I wouldn't directly speak to that. But I think that the market situation is really going to force prices to go up. we are not really going to get it any better. And I think it's very difficult for government, because government revenue generated from the sector is significantly committed. A part of it is non-committed. We have the Energy Sector Levies Act. We leveraged that and came up with the energy bond. The bondholders will expect us to actually keep the sanctity of the arrangement, meaning that we cannot touch the energy debt recovery levy, for example. But there are other parts that government may want to look at. But generally, government is generating about almost 7 billion thereabout. I mean, looking at last year's revenue numbers, about 7 billion thereabout from petroleum. It's significant. It's just slightly bigger than what we need in e-levy. So those calling for taxes to be reduced, I don't think it's a practical proposition. What maybe government may have to look at is trying to have targeted subsidies to the transportation sector to make it easier and cheaper for Ayalolo and Co to really get operating. But
from what you said,
prices are still going to be high.
From what you said earlier, it is easy to imagine that it will get there, isn't it? Because we have seen an increase in fuel prices at some pumps from 7.99 to 8.29. So getting to 9 cedis per liter.
It's not difficult. The only thing you have to do is increase by about 10% the current price, and you are hitting 9. So petroleum prices will have to go up.
Can you imagine this economy at that time?
I can imagine the economy and the agitation at that time, and government would have to start showing an example that would need everybody to somewhat sacrifice. It's easy for us to get to 9. All you need is another about $12 on the barrel, and then or possibly the exchange rate also depreciate by about the same, and you are there. So it's not something you can envisage. I think we are heading there. I mean, that's a fact.
Dr.
What we need to do. Sam said, what we need to do is for government to start rationalizing its taxes on petroleum. It can't achieve so much, but government has major revenue problems.
I'll come to the issue of rationalization because you guys have spoken about that for a long time, even before. Only 2 weeks ago, we saw the price stabilization and recovery levy reinstated by the National Petroleum Authority. Now, Dr. Otu, I was asking, what do you have to say generally about, LPG and petroleum?
Okay, thank you, Samson. I think somewhere last year, the TEC was clear that we should suspend the automatic adjustment formula for petroleum increases, in the same spirit that we suspended the Fiscal Responsibility Act to enable the Bank of Ghana government borrow more from the Bank of Ghana. That was a clear statement. But that meant that government then should begin to subsidize fuel prices. We also currently know the situation of government finances. Now, if we are not able to suspend the adjustment formula in its entirety, I think we are at a point where we should not tax fuel anymore as a way of cushioning consumers. I understand the point by Hosi that there are some of them that are committed. We can leave those things out. But at this point, we should not have tax on LPG. We should not have, in fact, if it's possible, we should rather look to ways we can subsidize LPG because the prices are getting to levels that are so difficult for most low-income consumers. And for the bigger petroleum, you should remove the taxes that are not committed, that we can remove. This is the only way. Otherwise, I mean, the Ukraine-Russian war will push the price up. And definitely, it will reflect in the domestic prices.
Help me understand this, Dr. Otu, that the economy is stressed. We are looking for money. The government says, let's burden share. At the same time, cost of living is rising. Labor says we need something to cushion us because we used to buy Kenke for 1 cedi, now we are buying for 2 cedis or 2 cedi 50 pesos. I've heard somewhere that you can buy it for even 3 cedis. I haven't tried that before. I want to get to that before I believe it. And you are saying the sources of raising revenue should be cut. No tax on that, remove tax on that, remove tax on that. I don't understand that. Can you reconcile that?
So I said remove tax not on everything, but on fuel. And I say this also because, see, fuel is a very noisy product. Workers are pointing to, hello?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Workers are pointing to the dashboard on Shell, Total, and it's actually increasing the pressure on unions, and that pressure will be reflected on government. So as a noisy product, there's something that we need to do about it. And what we can do, in our view, at this point in time, given the rising crude oil prices occasioned by the war in the eastern flank of Europe, and given the exchange rate losses, the least we can do is to say that, okay, we are no longer going to tax petroleum. Okay, but you can decide to tax petroleum, and then that noise will come, that pressure will come. Okay, instead of 25% salary increase, then give us 50 to be able to match up the rising cost of living. So in this situation, what ought to be done is the little help you can give to workers and the general public. But it's also about the point Senor just made, the little signals you can give to the general populace that we are all in this together. It may not amount to much, but then people will begin to come around and say that these are difficult economic situations. And you can see our leaders also living the same difficult economic situations. I agree perfectly with you. We are in a conundrum. So we should look hard at the government finances, the budget and everything, and see which little areas we can tweak to bring down the burden. If everything stays the same,
I haven't independently verified this yet, but from what you are saying and what Senor is saying, for example, we are hearing that the independence, anniversary celebrations for Monday, we are hearing that that's for tomorrow. We are hearing that the executive is telling the various district assemblies and the rest of them that because of the stress on the economy, they are unable to bring money from the Jubilee House to support them like they would always do. And they are urging them to be modest in how much they spend. Is that not, an indication of also tightening the belt?
It could be part of it, but more needs to be done.
Have your workers been paid? Your members, have they been paid this month? Last month, rather?
At least I checked yesterday, some have been paid, some may not have received their pay. And I really don't know the reason, but also our checks with the Ministry of Finance indicate some that it's not really a matter of pay hasn't gone. It's also banking transactions and the rigidities in the
and this is not irregular. This is not normal.
There are instances, I'm not sure, it's not irregular, it is not. Okay. I mean, except that, we are in a situation where any little hitch can be seen to be irregular. But if you stretch over the period, this is not irregular. There are times when those things happen.
I see. Gabi, so the general situation, and we have heard Senor, we have heard Dr. Otutu. How do you read it, and how are you also going through it, even before we come to your area and what you are seeking to be helpful?
It's really difficult. The cost of, if you are running a business, I'm sure over the past few months, your cost of operation might have increased by at least 50%. But your income, your margins are still the same. At the end of the day, you have to pay your workers, you have to ensure...
And you sympathize with your workers, right?
Oh, sure.
That you are unable to increase their salaries.
Very much so. Very much so, because I mean, we all live in this country. We all go to the market, and we know what is going on. Things are really, really, really tough in this country. And then when you give somebody as little as 100 Ghana cedis or 50 Ghana cedis, the way they will thank you from morning till evening tells you that, look, things are really, really, really tough. I mean, we also understand that the government is having a serious challenge. COVID-19 has brought its own problems onto us. But
people are disputing the COVID-19 thing because they are asking that all the money that the World Bank, the IMF has given to the country, what has it been used for? I've had some explanation that says it's not actually cash for you to expend, but it's supposed to shore up your foreign reserve. And some have raised the issue that in 2020, for example, the revenue that the country generated was around 47 million or so. But in the year 2021, when we are crying COVID, we raised in excess of 50
more,
$50 million, 50 million Ghana cedis. So is it million or billion really? I've forgotten the figures.
Billion.
So the government has no point in making any complaint.
Yes, we can look into those things, but at the end of the day, they are the people running the country. And I think one of the main excuses given for as to being the reason why we are where we are, things are very, very tough in this country, is government officials are always pointing to COVID, which is a reality. As to what the COVID
the reality,
money,
but people are pointing to other countries, neighboring countries, and saying, why were they also not hit by COVID?
Yes. At the end of the day, it boils down to accountability. At the end of the day, you've just mentioned some figures that came in. Have we been able to account for all those figures so that when you are telling Ghanaians that you are attributing our difficulty to COVID, we understand? Yes, but if the monies are not accounted for, we all know, even internally, there was a lot of internal mobilization of funds. Ghanaians, by our data, are very sympathetic to such situation, and we responded quite positively. So at the end of the day, we all need to call for accountability and ensure that whatever came in is properly accounted for.
We'll take a quick break and then we'll be back. Perhaps this is where Professor Atugube's question may be important. He says that government should stop lying to the people and should be candid with them, towards acceptance and passage of the e-levy. We're told ministers denied publicly, flatly, that the e-levy amount will not be used to take a loan or anything. Just yesterday, the Roads Minister stressed that in fact, that is the central purpose. Use the money to raise more money for development. We'll be right back.
Speaker, I rise to ask the Minister for Roads and Highways, what is the estimated loss of revenue till date due to the cessation of collection of tolls, bridge and road tolls, as contained in the Ministry's press release dated 17th November 2021?
Mr. Speaker, there are in total 38 toll stations across the country. There has been no loss of revenue to the Ministry of Roads and Highways since the cessation of the collection of road tolls. Mr. Speaker, after the presentation of the 2022 budget statement and economic policy of government by the Minister of Finance on 17th November 2020, most road users refused to pay road tolls at all the locations throughout the country. During that period, there was confusion between road users and the collectors. Mr. Speaker, In order to save lives and property at the toll locations, a directive was issued for the present suspension of the correction of the tolls. Mr. Speaker, with the approval of the 2022 budget, effectively, road tolls have been zero rated and there will be no revenue in 2022 for road tolls. The Minister. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record that, yes, in some months we could go up to 75, 78 million Ghana cedis. That is for the year. But on the average, if you take the, say, 5 years and you do the extrapolation, Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record that on annual average, the figure is around 68 million. Just as even on monthly average, we put it at 5, but it could be plus 10, minus 10 on monthly basis. Mr. Speaker, I do not know what we consider as a loss because it depends upon the comparison and the relationship being drawn. Mr. Speaker, not
a fresh graduate from the university into the Ghana Education Service is taking less than 1,600 a month.
So that's less than that?
Yes, and then the headmaster of Presec and Achimota do not have their salaries more than 3,500.
Oh, please.
No, I'm telling you. You can check.
Presec?
The Presec.
The headmaster?
Yeah, the headmaster.
So this is take home, right?
That is take home, yes.
Less than 3,000?
Yes.
Less than 3,000?
Yes.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm telling you the fact. You can check.
Let me begin with you again. Seyon, do you think that it was a mistake to have stopped the toll collection at the booths? Because it does appear there is some bit of regret about that. Before you talk about the rationalization that is necessary.
Okay. I used to sit on the Ghana Highways Authority board. I'm the PEF nominee on the board, and I've still been re-nominated. And I also used to chair the finance committee of the Ghana Highways Authority. I have always maintained that the tolls, I think, were an immoral bill because of the road levy that we charge the users of our roads through the fuel prices. We didn't have a very significant road levy in the petroleum price buildup. But as part of the energy sector levies rationalization process, which led to ESLA, we actually increased the road fund from something that was less than a peso or so, or just about a peso or so, to 41 pesos. Today, we are raking in over 2 billion. Why do we keep tolls after that? I don't see the wisdom in doing that. I don't think it's fair to the citizens, it's fair to users of the road. If you're making them pay for the maintenance of the road through fuel prices, and you're not taking small money, but you're taking huge money, billions of cedis through that, you shouldn't be chasing 75 billion cedis, creating a lot of social nuisance in the form of traffic at road tolls. See what we had in Kaswa. I found that totally immoral.
Kwame Agbodja suggests that the road tolls, at least, if you gathered that, you could use that to take care of NAPCO, for example, so that we will not be talking about NAPCO being in arrears. The volunteers are not being paid.
And then I don't think we should be worried about e-levy. I think we should even increase e-levy to maybe 4 or 5%, if that is it, because there are 1,001 reasons why you can keep taxing people. But when you're taxing people, it should be fair, it should be reasonable. When we're paying road tolls, we didn't really have road fund levy. When the levy came in, it came as a very small, insignificant levy. Now we move it into the billions. When you start moving it into the billions, then you're telling people, you know what? We have evened out this process. Pay for the maintenance of the road through your consumption of fuel, but you don't ask them to start creating all kinds of social and economic.
Let's hear you on the solution.
1 minute. Look at the loss of productive time at a toll booth like the Kaswa toll booth. Look at the loss of productive time at Tema. And question, with all the tolls that we're collecting, were we directly spending on those roads that we're collecting the roads on? Absolutely no. The Temamoto way will not be what it was before we stopped collecting
the finance minister says they were so sure that immediately this was removed, they were going to get the the e-levy in. You know, unfortunately, they miscalculated. And this is hurting the economy.
Samson,
I want you to talk about. I want you to talk about the
moment you started collecting 41 pesos from the people through fuel. The moment you stopped collecting less than 100 billion cedis in levies and in road levies through fuel and started collecting billions. Last year, I think we did about 2 billion thereabout. I don't think that it's something that should have been dependent on.
You wanted to talk about the solution being the rationalization of the taxes on fuel.
Yes, and I may be a broken record on this, so I may not go too much because you have a lot of my position on that particular thing. But there are a number of things that could be just done now. We have to look at the taxes. There are certain margins and reduce a few of them. I've discussed the bust margin, but we may possibly have to create a balance in there. I've also discussed our road transportation margins that can be looked at. On the tax side, I mean, we have issues like sanitation. Why do we not move to a polluter pay system and stop charging everybody who may not really be polluting as much? I've indicated also that the energy debt recovery levy is something you cannot touch. But the energy sector levies, what steps are we taking to make sure we don't continue creating debt? These are major policy questions that we'll have to ask. And I must note that following engagement with the central bank has been very, very supportive in the last week, releasing FX to make sure we can help reduce the impact of the FX depreciation on the petroleum sector. I think we've discussed that before, and I really want to commend the governor, his first deputy, and then the Treasury unit headed by Steve Opata for the support that they've given us, and also thank Mustafa Hamid. Other than that, petroleum prices would possibly have been maybe another 5% higher than you currently see on the market today. And we are hoping that we can collaborate more to create a lot more efficiency around that. But there are a few things that can be done on that side. The other base that we must start, while petroleum prices on the crude side is going up, government is also increasing its revenue on the upstream side. So why don't you have a nice clearinghouse where the income, the surplus income we are actually making from the upstream side comes into a nice pool with the estimates that we realize over a period. We also now reduce our downstream petroleum taxes by almost the same. So it can cushion the burden that we're actually having on consumers as we speak. It's something that must be done. When government introduced the special petroleum tax, the reason why it brought it was that petroleum prices on the upstream side had dropped significantly. And government had a major hole in there. So it needed the downstream people, as in the truck drivers, yourself, myself, to show up our taxes in petroleum so that it can compensate for the provisions it had made on the upstream side. Now we have a boom on the upstream side. Why don't we have the upstream side also cushion us, the consumers, on the downstream side? This is a major policy thing that government must reasonably consider and create a nice balance between the two. But you know, the kitchen is hot, so any opportunity to rake in more income will be chased.
You had been talking about the implications of the decline in the consumption of LPG, and now the price hike destroying and worsening it further. What does the statistic look like?
If you look at 2006, to 2015, when the taxes was introduced on the product. Within the period of 10 years, LPG consumption in Ghana was growing at an average rate of 16.16%. I don't know of any industry in Ghana that grows that much. You know, in 2015, prices of crude oil, like Senor just said, dropped so low. And government saw it as an opportunity to introduce taxes on the product. So after the taxes had been introduced, the growth became so slow. In 2018, when Cabinet set the objective to double consumption of LPG, I think 2018, 2019, we did about 30,000, an average of 30,000 metric tons a month. This dropped in 2020 to 29,000 metric tons. It has dropped further in 2021 to 28,000 metric tons. And 2022, the way it has started, we are expecting even a bigger drop. So statistically, LPG consumption is on the decline. At best, we are stagnating, where everything else, every other thing is growing. As I indicated, there is no way we can get everybody to consume LPG by removing the taxes. But we believe it's a very, very, very good step. Once you take that off, you lower the price, and you are able to attract a lot more people to consume the product. If we allow the taxes to stay on, and our city don't get better.
I think the question government will usually ask is, who pays for that?
The taxes.
What you are asking to be taken off, who pays for it?
Something. Government has so many sources of revenue. It's about priority. I always go back to the fact that His Excellency the President has set a target, but you can't eat your cake and have it. It's a very laudable target, but we haven't had the courage to implement the decisions that will enable us to realize that target. There is no way, it's impossible for us to achieve His Excellency the President vision for consumption of LPG if we keep prices at where it is now. I think first step is to look at taking off all the taxes so that we'll be at cost. And the second will be coming up with some ingenious means of subsidizing it, even if it's only for the rural folks, so that we can get a lot more people to consume LPG. The other reason why we are also not expanding in consumption is the fact that over the past 4 or 5 years, there's been a ban on construction of LPG in Ghana. LPG stations. Government intend introducing cylinder recirculation, and as a result, it has banned the construction of new stations in the country. And for us, what even worries us most is not even you issuing us with new construction permit to construct, but you know, when the atomic incident happened, it takes an average of about 2 years to construct an LPG station. So when the atomic incident happened and government issued a ban, there were a lot of stations which were under construction. Some were 80% complete, 70, 60, 50% complete. And a lot of investment has gone into this. We put all these stations across the country together, and we had about 123, I think, stations that money has been sunk.
Would have increased circulation.
We would have increased access to the product if those stations were allowed to complete and operate. Something, the LPG industry is one of the few local industries in Ghana. We have about 42 LPG marketing companies in the country, and all of these companies are owned by Ghanaians, indigenous Ghanaians. So this is an indigenous investments we are talking about. So we have been pleading with government that, look, if you are saying you won't issue a new permit for us to construct, that's fine. But those that we have constructed, give us the go-ahead to complete it so that we can give more people access to the product.
And what's the response?
The response has not been too good. I must say that the current Chief Executive, Mustafa Hamid, has been doing a lot of work on that. But as I speak to you now, that ban is still in force. And we have locked up a lot of capital. In fact, somewhere last year, we got a consultant who tried to put the investment that has gone down the drain. And he came up with a figure of about 60 million Ghana cedis at the time, $10 million. So our appeal has always been that, look, even if you are coming with cylinder recirculation, you need outlet to still distribute your cylinders. So give us the opportunity.
So that's the reason that is not being allowed to go on, because of the intended.
Yes, because of the intended cylinder recirculation
plant or something.
Exactly. We haven't said government shouldn't.
And that I presume will be work that will be handed to multinationals, perhaps.
Well, if you look at the capital involved in putting up this plant, you are talking about $7 million, between $7 to $10 million to put up an average cylinder recirculation. And
those who are in the business now may become retailers.
Yes, that's what is going to eventually happen.
Yeah. Interesting. Let me hear from Dr. Kwabena Nyako too. Doc, so at the TUC, the mother organization representing workers, in these circumstances, how can you be met halfway? What should government be anticipating?
Okay. So we have had this labor conference where a number of things have entered our communique. We more or less know the economic difficulties in which the country finds itself. We also know the challenges labor faces with poor pay, but also pay inequities. So one of the things we hardly talk about is the huge pay inequities within the public sector. So some people earn an average of 1,800, but you also have some people earning 55,000 a month. So all of this have to be taken on board. Rising inflation also means that the real wage on the single span is declining. Between 2010 and 2022, real wage, what the wage can do, has declined by about 8% within this period. This was not a promise of single span. So the question we ask ourselves is, what is to be done? If we increase pay by 20%, will those on the single span earning 600, will it allow them to take care of all these increases? Probably not. How do we address the inequities? How do we address the declining trend? We think that we need to review the single span pay policy. It ought to have been reviewed in 2015. But remember, in 2015, the IMF was here. And when IMF enters your country, your government doesn't listen to anybody except the IMF. You couldn't review. We need to review the entire public sector pay package to address the disparities. Okay, this will take time. In the meantime, workers are suffering. So we need to come to a point where government will say that in spite of all the challenges, I need to do something to cushion workers. That is the point we need to have a discussion with government about. Whilst we wait for a reviewed single span and a public sector pay regime, that actually enhances the emolument for everybody, but also reduces the inequities that we currently see on the single span. But I think that there was this point about COVID that I wanted to address. It is true. I mean, you just showed an advert when we went offline that COVID is rare. And it is rare not just as a health problem. It is rare also because of its economic impact. In 2022, we saw government revenues go down by about 13.4 billion Ghana cedis. Expenditures went up by 11.8 billion. So you more or less have a government that had presented a budget and had to put aside that budget to be able to deal with the health emergency. Okay, so it is true. Then the question also about we are not only one. It is true that we are not only one. But if you check our sub-region properly, and if you really understand what goes on in our sub-region, sometimes, you hear Nigerian daughters and workers go on strike. But if you go into the details, they are going on strike sometimes not for a pay increase, but for unpaid wages and salaries. So it is important that we get the context very right. We got monies from the IMF. You are right, about 2 billion. 1 billion of which is actually for money we can use as support. But there's another 1 billion which is called the SDR allocation. It is there, we can spend it. But again, our checks indicate that government has used it to shore its reserves. Okay. We got additional 400 million from the World Bank. But the point is that all of these things pale into insignificance compared to the expenditures government had to do. Of course, I also agree that there are accountability questions that we need to address and to give citizens the comfort that really all that monies we raised have been spent properly. And everybody then comes to a conclusion that, okay, we are still in difficulty and we must address those difficulties. And those difficulties must be addressed holistically. All of us must be seen to demonstrate and live in the hardship that the country, that currently confronts the country.
Okay, we have just a few minutes to draw the curtains on this show. I'll take a break. When I return, I'll be asking you this question because when you talk about cutting down, tightening the belt at the level of, top leadership as well, I heard you mention that some people may be taking 50,000 or 55,000 plus at the end of the month, while some are taking 1,600 or 600. I want to know how much of a push you have made to assist or insist that the finance minister keeps to his word. Soon after the assumed power, the suggestion was that those who were taking these obnoxious, unconscionable salaries, there would be some rationalization about them. We heard about those who earn far more than even the president earns. And unfortunately, the reports show that these people who are manning the SOE, state-owned enterprises, don't bring us any profit. What they really have specialized in doing is piling debt for us, and just it doesn't seem to make sense. And yet some are earning, like you suggested, 55,000 at the end of the month. We understand some are earning in the region of some 80,000 plus in the month. How much of that kind of rationalization will even cushion the circumstance we have now? We'll be right back.
Okay.
The government, in its wisdom, has proposed the passage of the e-levy, to bring in more revenue to build the road infrastructure of our country for all of us. So government is looking forward to the passage of the e-levy that will bring in greater revenue that will be securitized and then used to raise a bond, if possible. I'm answering the question, so listen to me. I am answering the question. To raise a bond to build the road sector infrastructure. So government's direction and government policy is to bring in a better form of correction, because the toll revenue is built in the proposed e-levy. So that's what government is determined to ensure that it's brought to bear.
And as you know, some people are agitated by this and shocked by this because the earlier communication was that this is never the intention. Well, some of us had known this all along, but once they deny it publicly, you have nothing else to do. Some of your messages here, Little Tete says, when people go wrong, the right steps should be taken to solve the issues. Trying to show people where power lies is not the right way to go. Masaudu, Junior Masaudu says, good morning. President Akufo-Addo in 2016 preached Arab Spring, and a young man that burnt himself in the Arab Spring is a birthday celebration. I don't understand that. Why must Akufo-Addo be scared of coup if he thinks he's managing our resources well? OK Azuma says, we have become jittery when the word coup is mentioned because as a people, we care more about effects than causes. That is our nemesis, not the word coup. We must fix the country. Hashtag fix the country. Opipihene says that some of us never tasted coup before, and from the benefit of hindsight, will never want to experience one. In fact, won't even wish it for my sworn enemy. So coup mongers going round inciting bloodthirsty, tasty people to stage one should without delay be apprehended and dealt with, period. Peter Doe Jr. says it's a fact that the recent coups in Africa were as a result of high level of corruption, insecurity, government election manipulation, economic hardship, youth unemployment, etc. And the situation in Ghana is worse. Really? Is that why this government is jittery when the word coup is mentioned? Thanks for your question, though. This is from Guy G in Newark, New Jersey. He says, listening to government officials, it appears the e-levy has acquired the status of Jesus Christ, feeding 5,000 people with a loaf of bread. Dr. Arthur Kennedy says, my take, if $984 million spread over a 3-year period from the IMF could work magic by giving the Mahama administration policy credibility, what makes Dr. Arthur Kennedy think same amount per annum raised internally with no conditionalities will not work magic this time around? All the government needs is to close its budget deficit. Nothing more, nothing less. Right? Thanks for that message. And my guest for this very final segment, we have just some 6 minutes to go, have been Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu, who is Chief Economist and Director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, the TUC. Gabriel Kumi is Vice Chairman, LPG Marketing Companies Association of Ghana. Senyor Kwesi Hosi is CEO, Ghana Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. And Doc, I had asked the question before we went to the break. You want to answer that?
You can console yourself that your pay is okay until you see the other person's pay. So sometimes the agitation is about what others are receiving. And unfortunately, those that call for a restraint or the wage bill are the ones earning the highest. It becomes difficult for those struggling with 500 and 600 to accept a call for a restraint. So, and you made a point about the finance minister. This was in 2019 during the media review, in which he said that those on the single spine have lower pay, and that going forward to bridge the gap, we will have a situation where single spine will have higher salary increases compared to the others. Unfortunately, this has not been the case. In 2021, when those on single spine had 4%, there are some state enterprises that got 35%. And for us, this is not right. It's unfair. It further widens the gap. Now, when you do this comparison, people tell you, oh, if you are talking about the money MD of, say, GOI or a commercial bank, you want to peg their pay to what the private sector gives. Okay, if that is the case, then they must also give us the results the private sector gives.
Exactly.
But we have a situation where collectively they are making losses, huge margins, losses. Their losses have increased by more than 200%. You cannot justify that. And those losses will eventually be picked up by the state. It is important that we close this gap. And to do that, one of the things we need to do is to look hard at the laws relating to pay and conditions of service in the public sector. Because there are different laws. So if you want to put people even on the single span, they tell you that my enabling act tells me that it is my board, it is the president that must determine my pay. We need to harmonize pay, we need to reduce the inequities, but we need to do that by also reviewing the laws relating to pay in the public sector.
Thank you very much, and happy Independence Day to you. Senor C, let's have your last word.
I think government must constructively look at a cross subsidy between the upstream windfall and then also the downstream taxes that we have. And I think that it is time for them to start having an honest conversation about e-levy. Amidst this hardship that everybody is experiencing, it would be a difficult proposition to keep the petroleum prices or taxes at the levels that we have today and still say you want to drive e-levy as currently designed. That'd be practical about the solution. But we really call on government, start living by example. Government is too big.
All right.
When you are broke, you don't go to luxury restaurants.
Thank you.
So
how
please,
are you observing the Independence Day, 65th birthday?
It's a time for us to really look back and take proper stock. It's not time for us to be moving around and saluting the sun. I don't think it's worth it.
How are you going to be taking that stock?
Well, one of the things we'll be doing as part of the One Ghana movement, we will be having the Independence Day lecture together with the University of Ghana Economics Department. The lecture will be delivered by Professor Kwesi Botwe, and he will be speaking on the economy after 65 years and how to really drive sustainability and democratic consolidation and going forward. To be at 10 a.m. at the CD conference and conference hall at the Econs Department at Legon, and we would invite everybody to partake.
When is this?
Sorry for using this opportunity for that, but I think it's a good time for us all to take stock.
When is this?
It's on Monday. It's on Monday at 10 a.m.
All right. Thank you very much, Senor. What will be your last word to Ghanaians?
We will still call on government to look seriously at tax on LPG. The taxes were put on the product at a time when crude oil was under $30. And at that time, it made sense for you to try to milk the situation and develop our country with. But at this moment, against the backdrop of the fact that we want to double consumption of LPG, it doesn't really make sense to keep taxes on LPG.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabriel Kumi. And as always, my outfit is by Habil's Couture. You can find them at Adringano Gate, East Legon. You can call them 0200 84 1988, 0200 84 1988. In Ghana month, go to Habil's Couture for them to make you look sharp and smart. My guests have been Dr. Arthur Kobina Kennedy, physician and political activist, Professor Kwejo Appiah-J. Etua, who is the School of Law, University of Ghana, Dr. John Osai Kwapong, is political scientist, democracy and development fellow, CDD Ghana. Dr. Kwabena Nyako Otu, chief economist and director, Labor Research and Policy Institute, the Trades Union Congress. Gabriel Kumi, vice chairman, LPG Marketing Companies Association of Ghana, and Senyo Kwesi Hosi, is CEO, Ghana Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. I'm Samson Ladia Yanine. Thank you, and join us next week, God willing, for yet another educative session.